Welcome to Middletown United Methodist Church. We're so glad you could join us today for God's Words to Us from our senior pastor, Wayne Bishop.
Have you ever prayed for something and then you have become you have the opportunity to become the answer to what you prayed for? I mean, it may not be just a few hours apart, it may be years apart. And it's astounding how God hears our prayers and in God's sense of wisdom and timing answers those prayers. Let me share with you a true story. Some of you have heard this before, but I think it bears repeating again because it's just one example in my own particular experience and own particular life of how powerful and amazing and miraculous God is and how God can take prayers offered so long ago and sometimes even to the point where we didn't remember praying them until it pops up on a radar screen to say, whoa, that's an answer to prayer. I'd long since forgotten about it. But God hadn't. And in God's way, God answers it. Back in 1982, my family and I were appointed from Calhoun and Rumsey, Kentucky to move to Summit Heights Church over on the Outer Loop. Big deal. Yes, it was. Didn't know how big it was. And so as we moved to that rural appointment to a suburban appointment, for the first time in my ministry, I was just a few miles separated from my older brother. And I was looking forward to re-engaging. That wasn't that when we were growing up. I was looking forward to disengaging. But at this particular time, looking forward to re-engaging with my brother. Did I mention he was my older brother? Any of you have older brothers or sisters? Yeah, you know how it is, don't you? Did they try to tell you what to do? Yeah, typical of all families with him. But anyhow, my brother, when we got appointed and celebrating our being just a few miles apart to Summit Heights, I visited with him. He said, Wayne, I want you to do something. And I always cringe when he says that. He said, but I want you to come and work alongside of me. Because you live and have lived now for a number of years into the safety of the church. And you just deal with churchy things. And live in that kind of sheep environment. And I want you to experience life, real life, like it is out in the real world. Come alongside of me. It so happened he was the chief of what was then the Black Mud Fire Department and wanted me to volunteer when I had time to come and be with him. And it so happens that back then and still today, the area in which he was a chief over was the highest crime district in Jefferson County. And so therefore, the opportunity to engage people and life in circumstances that I would rather had not engaged became real when I said yes. And so I rode with him, beside him, and saw things and experienced things and smelled things and had things environmentally happen around me that I would not have otherwise experienced. And let me tell you, it was eye-opening and difficult and surprising and shocking. And what I remember about all sometimes of those pain and misery, what I remember most about those particular experiences was feeling so helpless and so powerless in the midst of things that were so big that I could not control or have much import and impact into. And what I remember especially is the children. Their shock, their tears, their fears, the looks on their faces of how they were being impacted by the incidences that were being thrust upon them, and they were innocent. Would there be any difference? How could we help? How could there be a change? And so we referred to Red Cross and the ministerial associations and various other kinds of things that could be done, but I felt so, all I did was pray, just pray. Pray, Lord, bless this child, bless these children, bless this family. Pray, continue to pray. And then as it would happen, then I moved on and reappointed again to Princeton, Kentucky and Western Kentucky. And you know how time sort of moves on and things are forgotten and you just sort of go on with life, engage in other kinds of things and experiences. And then here in 1990, appointed first time to the Middletown Church and engaged as we were during that period of time in building a new church and relocating the church and all the things that were to take place there. And finally in 1997, it came up to the point that the bishop at that particular point in time says it's time for you to move and I want you to become the district superintendent of the Louisville district. And so it happened. And let me tell you, it was a jolt. I could not make any sense or understanding about why that was the case and what was taking place and why it had to be. Was there any wisdom involved in all of this? And so it happened at that particular point that there was a church back over in that Newburgh community that was at its juncture of being closed and shut down. And what we normally do as Methodists, and we're still in that pattern, is that when we close a church, we sell the property and we move away from it and we go out of ministry and mission in that area. We close churches, sell the property, move away, take the money and put it somewhere else. That's our pattern. That's how we normally do things. In fact, we just had an auction, I think it was supposed to happen last week or this week, where we sold a church in West Louisville at auction. And we're gone, relieved of that burden. In the western part of a city, do you know of any needs in West Louisville? Where would Jesus have us to be, people, if we were be in mission? Where is Jesus now? Did you remember reading, when did we see you hungry and thirsty and naked and poor and in prison? And engaging with those things. And so it so happens at that point in time when I was a DS, we were getting ready to close this church, and it was sort of God hitting me in the head with the 2x4, as sometimes He has to do. He said, Wayne, do you remember driving across these streets in this Newburgh community when you were with your brother and saying prayers about those kids and about those families? I remember, Lord. What are you going to do with this property out here now that you're getting ready to sell and close and leave and abandon? What about those prayers? And so it just was a dawning of inspiration and remembrance. And so I asked even some people from this congregation who were serving at the district level at that time, I'll call them by name. You'll forgive them, I'm sure. But they've forgiven me because I moved off no quicker than I asked them to do this, then I moved away and they were left holding the ball. Probably that was a God thing too, because I would have gotten in the way. But Jim Sutton, Bob Farrar, Larry Stess were among that original meeting at the table to say, let's not sell this place. Can we do something to help these kids? Can we do something not to move away from here, but to move into here? In a beautiful kind of way that we can make a difference in the lives of these children. Long time ago, prayers prayed so long that I'd since put them aside. God still remembered. Still is remembering. How wonderful God is. How miraculous God is in terms of hearing prayers and responding to them. Here's a picture of the new building that's going up, what is now the Lighthouse, which is on the property that would have been abandoned and sold, but yet has been claimed for the Spirit of Christ. We've already reached many kids over there, and the capacity of the old building is full. Now the new building is going to launch us into more and more ways where Christ can be engaged in the life of those kids. God is good. Oh, so good. And how prayers prayed now will find answers in God's way, miraculous way, in days yet to come.